Hi folks, Roland Martin here and welcome to another YouTube adventure. You know, I read all the comments that you make on my YouTube channel, and one of the big comments is about line and knots. And I covered a really good deal on the best knots for braid. But what about monofilament? Because there's more people out there that use monofilament than any other kind of line. So let's talk about monofilament today. And of course we have the braid and we have the fluorocarbon. And just for something to talk about, look at this. Monofilament on the average of a spool like this will cost about 66 cents per hundred. Another one here. And maybe if I buy big spools, like some of those big spools, I can get it down to half that price, okay? Now, you talk about braid. Braid like this, however, 100, 150 yards is about $15, okay? It's like 20 times more expensive than monofilament. And again, looking at fluorocarbon, the fluorocarbon, again, is about the same cost as the braid. So braid and fluorocarbon are really, really expensive, but let's face it, monofilament is where most of the line is being manufactured now. Most of the people use monofilament. I use my monofilament for all my spinner baits, for my topwater plugs, for an awful lot of my fishing. I use my braid for my heavy duty flipping and some worm fishing and stuff like that, and I use fluorocarbon in the real clear water. But there's limited things. Monofilament is still my #1 line. Okay, let's get started. Okay, folks, so today I'm going to show you the 4 knots that are going to carry you through all your fishing needs. The first, the improved clinch knot, a simple knot that's been around a long time. It's pretty reliable. The second is a Palomar knot, just a little bit stronger, a little bit more difficult to tie, an excellent knot. The third is a double uni knot for connecting leaders and connecting lines together, the strongest connection that I know of, and it's easiest to tie. And the last knot is a loop knot, a good loop knot for, say, a crankbait or any kind of jig in the loop knots or something. So, okay, let's get started. But before I get started, I can't use this regular light line like this because you can't see it. It's just too small. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get some real big heavy line right here. This big old heavy stuff like this. Okay, this is big heavy duty line. You'll be able to see that really good. And I'm going to tie also, I might even use some of this really big saltwater monofilament. I'll try if that shows up. I don't know if that'll probably this should show up better. I'll pretend like this is monofilament, okay? And let's get a big lure to tie on. Okay, I got a big old frog here. That's going to be a good thing to demonstrate with. Now let's again pretend that this big heavy saltwater line is monofilament. I just want to show it to you because you can be able to see it good. Let's start with the improved clinch knot. Now I like to make at least 5 turns with the improved clinch knot, and the lighter the line, I'll go more turns. I go to maybe 7 on, say, 10-pound line. On maybe I'll maybe go 8 turns on even lighter line. But let's just say we're dealing with, say, 20-pound test line. Okay, let's take this frog, for example, and this is what I wouldn't even throw this on monofilament, for example. I'd probably throw it on braid, but just for the sake of demonstration, let's show you what a improved clinch knot is. I go through the eye, and I'm just going to go through it like this, and then I'll put my finger in the line and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's the clinch knot going through one time, but when you go through this loop a second time back through it, it makes it the improved clinch knot. You tighten that up, tighten it down, sit it down tight, and of course you trim it off with a knife. Let me just show you some other thing that I like to do on knots. If you really want a stronger knot, there's one thing you can always do, and that is you can always add a little super glue. Now super glue is kind of a funny deal. This happens to be Gorilla Glue, then there's super glue, and then there's all kinds of different types of things, but a little teeny dab of super glue, if you really want some strength, really, really helps. So that's just one good knot. That knot is the nation's #1 monofilament knot. That's only 5 turns because it's heavy line. If it was lighter line, again, I'd go maybe 7 turns. Okay, the improved clinch knot, a rock solid line knot that is great for monofilament. That's the first knot. Okay, folks, again, we're talking about monofilament. This happens to be 20-pound test monofilament, which I use an awful lot of. And remember, I said that the average cost per 100 yards isn't but 66 cents. If you buy even a bigger spool, it comes down to like 30 cents for a spool line. So it really is cheap and inexpensive. Let's take this frog, for example, and let's pretend like we're going to take and tie my second knot, and that is a Palomar knot. You can't beat a Palomar knot. Palomar knot is actually the strongest way to tie on a lure that I know of. And to tie a Palomar knot, I take about a foot of line like this, about a foot, okay, and just kind of pass both ends of it through there, okay. Come through the eye with a double line. Okay, come out about 4 inches like this and tie an overhand knot, right like this, okay. And that end right here, that's what I call the tag end, the loop end, I take the whole lure and I go through that loop, okay? Now, to pull it up tight, I take the tag end. The tag end is the single end, and I pull it down tight first, pull it down tight. And then I finish the knot off by pulling it up tight with the main line. Okay, so I'm going to trim this line. I'll just a lot of times hold it with my teeth, take my knife, cut. Remember, this is pretend like it's monofilament. And again, I'm really big on super glue. Anytime that I can, I often put super glue on my knot. So that's one really good knot. Okay, the Palomar knot is the strongest knot that I know of for tying on a lure. And it works for big, heavy line as well. You can use it up to 40 and 50 pound test monofilament for saltwater. It still works. And it works for the light line as well. So you can't hardly beat a Palomar knot, the strongest connection that I know of. Okay, what's the third knot? Well, the third knot I'm going to show you is a way to join two lines together, whether it's a leader and monofilament and braid on monofilament, or one heavy monofilament and one light monofilament. It doesn't make any difference. You can use braid, monofilament, the heavy line, light line, and you can connect them all together with a double uni. And let me show you how I do it. Okay, before I show you that double uni knot, let's talk about knots in general, and let's talk about guides that you're going to have to throw. If you have a knot in your line, like with the double uni knot, you're going to have to totally avoid micro guides. Here, I want to just show you. This one rod is not suitable for throwing a double uni knot. It has a little bitty micro guides. It's not going to cast. These little bitty guides are so small. If you try to put 20-pound line in them in a double configuration like in a double unit, it's not going to cast. You just can't cast it. Now here's a bigger knot. Here's bigger guide for bigger knots, and that's still kind of small. But the larger guides are for your knots and leaders. Okay. Okay. Let's get started. Let's take this heavy monofilament, for example, and now we have this is big saltwater monofilament, and now we have big, say, saltwater either monofilament or braid on this side, just to show you that there's two different lines. And let's join them together with a double uni, the best connection knot that I know of. Okay, let's get started. Let's put the two lines together and pull them out about a foot. Take my hand and put it in the middle, okay, and then make a loop with, this is the monofilament side. I'm going to make a nice little loop right here. Okay, I'll make a loop and go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is heavy line, so I would normally go with lighter line. I would go 5 or 6 times, but since that's so heavy, I'm only going to go 4 for the demonstration purposes. And now I'm going to take the whole line, the whole entire line, and turn it 180 degrees. I'm going to turn it all the way around, and now I had the other side of the line, which happens to be braid, but it could be a monofilament as well. And I'm going to make a loop on this side. Remember, we're doing a double uni, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, it's heavy line. I could go 6 or 7 or 8, and with the lighter line, I'll go 7 or 8. I'll pull that tight. Now the whole thing, I'm going to wet it. I'm going to wet the whole thing down. Okay, I'm going to wet it down, and I'm going to pull it all tight. Oh, right down like that, and tight like that. And I'll pull this line. I'm going to. Now, what I like to do, a lot of times to cut this line off, I will just take a knife and put this in my teeth. This looks a little dangerous. And go right down the line until I hit the knot and cut it. And watch this. Go right down the line. Cut it. Okay? It sounds a little dangerous, but it really does work. Go on the other side. Take the other side of either monofilament or braid. Go right down the line to the knot. Cut it. It seems to work, and I'm telling you, I'm going to pull real hard. Pull real hard. Now, that's a perfectly tied double uni knot with the addition of a little bit of super glue. I make it a couple percent stronger, just a couple percent, just a little bit of super glue, and that is the way to tie a connection, whether it's two different size monofilaments, whether it's just connecting your monofilament to more monofilament, whether it's connecting it to a braid monofilament. It doesn't make any difference. The double uni knots works with all types of line, particularly monofilament is just wonderful. Okay, so we're really getting somewhere now, folks. Let's go to my fourth knot. Now my fourth knot, I'm going to have to show you a different lure for that. Okay, I found a jig. Now let's talk about a loop knot, because for the last knot, I want to show you that a loop knot is what you really want when you're fishing a jig. And the reason is, when that jig comes through the water, you want it to swim around and vibrate up and down and wiggle around. If it's all tied, particularly on a big leader or something like that, if you're saltwater fishing, it's just gonna glide through the water. But when you have the proper loop knot tied, it's gonna actually swivel like this, and it's gonna wiggle too, but it's gonna go up and down as you pull it. Now, to make that happen, to make a proper loop knot happen, let's get started. The first step in making a good uni loop knot is to make an overhand loop like that and pass the line through the lure. Okay. Now, take the line and go right through that loop again, right through this loop that you've just made, this loop. I'm just going to come right through this side of it. There's two ways to go through it. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I like to come through that side there. Okay, come right through that knot. Now, it's tight. I'm going to pull it down tight like this. And now I'm going to do a uni knot. I'm going to do the same uni like you saw me do before on half. I just made that loop right here, and I go through here once. Okay, go through once. Okay, I go through twice, 3 times, say 4 times. Now pull the thing down tight, pull it down tight. And now what happens is when I pull that thing down tight, and watch the other knot come forward. The 2 knots come together. Okay, boom. Now I'm going to trim that off. Okay, now we have that's a little bit longer loop. I could have made that loop a little shorter. However, there's a whole lot of fish to think about. There's a fish in the ocean that, like barracudas and all kind of other fish and mackerel and everything else, that have sharp, toothy critters. And in freshwater, of course, there's the walleyes and the pike and the muskies and any number of fish with sharp teeth. And so sometimes that longer leader is a good deal. It's a double line is a little bit harder to cut than a single line. Okay, so now the knot, see how it just rocks so good back and forth. This is really, really a big deal. Now remember now, this would, if in the case of a crankbait, this might be 8-pound monofilament. Okay, in the case of a big saltwater jig, it might be 20-pound or 30-pound monofilament. In the case of a snook, for example, it might be 40-pound monofilament for a leader. So there's all kind of different combinations. But the thing is, that jig is now going to be able to rock and roll like it's supposed to. The crankbait's going to wiggle and wobble a lot bigger than ever. Okay, so I've taught you the 4 favorite knots that for monofilament. They're rock solid. You can get all your fishing done at a very reasonable cost and price. You don't have to go to that expensive braid, that expensive fluorocarbon. Hey, a good monofilament, you can't beat it. And a lot of good knots involved with it as well. Hey, so folks, thanks for watching. I'm an old school teacher. I'm an old rifle range instructor in the military. So I enjoy teaching you and passing it on. I'm getting to be an old guy. So whatever knowledge I have, hey, I want you to have it as well. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you again soon.